I'm excited to have with me today Dr. Sabrina J. Ellis. She is a personal growth coach, mentor, keynote speaker, author of 3 books, and former pastor. And she's here today to talk about her book, Wife Life, and share some financial health tips. Welcome, Dr. Ellis.
Thank you. I am so pleased to have been invited and to be participating with you today.
Yes, finally we're here after so many times. But you know what? We're here, and that's
Right.
yeah. So I want to congratulate you on being the 2016 recipient of President Obama's Lifetime Achievement Award.
Thank
Tell
you.
the audience about that.
Well, I was surprised when I was selected, but excited. And it was more or less representatives from his office that were handling that particular reward and award. And so when they came to Cleveland, it was an exciting time, and presented the certificate and just talked a little bit about why I was receiving it. And it had more to do with my work in the community, just reaching out to the community and serving the people in Cleveland. And so I was really excited about having it.
Yeah, said it was the Chief Visionary Officer of Free to Thrive. Is that correct?
That is what I am operating as now, and what I'm doing
Mhm.
now. At the time of that award, I was serving as the executive pastor of our church, and I was responsible for much of the community
Mhm.
activities that we were involved in. So
Oh, that's wonderful, Dr. Ellis. I mean, as I said before we went live or recording here, you have such an impressive resume. I mean, I mean, the audience is going to be in for a real treat if they're not already.
yeah.
Um, but I like to talk about your book, Wife Life, and that was launched in 2019. Is that correct? Is that what?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Um, Wife Life, Securing Your Future. And it's basically, well, the subject matter really became a passion for
Mhm.
me. I really kind of had my feelings in there when I started out because of some of the things that I experienced. So the book is really a guide,
Mhm.
and can be used as a tool for women who have husbands, or who are married, and not necessarily at the point of becoming widows or widowers, but the whole concept and the idea is to address this issue before that
Mhm.
time comes. We know it's inevitable, and statistics actually say that the males will go before the females. They die sooner. And so it became a concern for me because I watched so many women in my context, um, who lost their husbands, and their lives changed dramatically. And not just because of the loss in itself. Certainly, they were devastated to lose their spouse, but their lifestyle changed in that, um, of course, that means that income is no longer coming in. And because there was no preparation for that day, they ended up either actually living in poverty or very close to poverty. So when you go back to the statistics concerning widows, especially in the United States, the reality of it is that those who become widows, statistics say that within 5 years, 4 to 5 years, that widow is likely to end up living in poverty.
Yes, and it's a subject you really don't really want to face or talk about, but we need to. And that's where your book is a self-help guide and
Right.
to really face it head on. And but like the book, like I like the title. How did you come up with the title, Dr. Ellis? Like Wife Life.
Um,
I love it.
well, I did think through it. I continued to think through it. I didn't want to leave it at wife life because that suggests that I'm going to talk about how to do life as a wife. It kind of leans in that direction, but it's a whole different concept than what many would be thinking about. And so it's really about it is about securing your future. And when I say I've witnessed so many things in my context, this doesn't necessarily have to just be separation by death. It can be separation by divorce. And of course, when you're on that day, that wedding day, you're not thinking about separation. You don't want to think about the possibility of death, even though the vows say, till death do us part. You don't really think about that. You don't even really want to think about for better or for worse, because it's going to be better. That day, it's all going to be better. But the truth is, my personal experience as a teenager was my parents' divorce and watching my mom work so hard to finish raising her 3 teenagers. And I know how I felt then, but that was sort of like the beginning of watching a pattern of events. And when I say my context, I grew up in church. I'm a PK. So that's the kind of like an oxymoron when you think pastor, divorced his wife, nowadays it's just, the thing, but then it wasn't, And so watching her struggle, our lifestyle changed drastically. We and it's not to suggest that any of the things that we had to go to are bad. It's just they were different. So, for example, after having lived in a house growing up, now we have to move out of a house and go to an apartment. After always having things that we needed at our, disposal, we go from access to food stamps. Well, it's a card now, but then so you get what I'm saying, how different, how major the changes were. And then from there, just watching other women whose husbands passed and how differently their lives became. And when I started looking at it, it was not a couple of years ago, maybe just before the pandemic. Friends of ours, the husband passed away and the wife was left to total devastation. I mean, it was really, really bad. And even though we were frustrated about how he left her, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, how often are we meaning women, gonna let this happen? When do we wake up and take care of ourselves? And I think there's a way to do that, even if it's no more than being aware and then having the conversation with your spouse, your mate, to talk about it. I know everybody may not be able to have an easy conversation, but you have to start somewhere. And if it looks like it's not going to be easy, that should be a signal that you need to be doing something for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, so how can we start? Like, I think like financial health tips, Dr. Ellis, like have a budget, just, have that talk. But what else, like, would you suggest? Like,
well, let me be clear that they're suggestions because I am not a financial planner. I am not that financial expert. What I did do, though, is in trying to get my own house in order, I did spend time with financial planners and those who were specialized in insurance and those kinds of things. So first of all, I would recommend, highly recommend, a financial planner if you don't have one. And unfortunately, many times people think, well, that sounds like that's something for people with a lot of money. No, have any at all. You need somebody to help you figure out what to do with it and what are the best places to put it. If you've been accustomed to spending everything, you need to slow down and figure out, what I hate, because right now I need to redo mine, and that is have a budget.
Yes.
Well, a lot of people don't like to talk about it. It's a bad word, but it's helpful in your planning. And so a financial planner is going to talk to you about what is priority. Just basic life insurance. There's so many people who don't have life insurance for a lot of different reasons. But not only should you have life insurance, but you should make sure as the wife that you are the beneficiary on that policy. So I'm not here to say what type of insurance you should have. That's part of the family planning and deciding to do what works for your family, what works for your household. But what I am here to say is you need a life insurance policy.
Yes. And also, like, would you suggest like counseling too? Like, if it's difficult to speak to your husband, going to counseling to come to terms or come to an agreement with the will or with etc.
Absolutely. There are many parts to it. I think when you get started with the basics and how far you have to go also depends on your assets. I mean,
Yes.
you may not have to, if you don't own a lot of property and you don't have a lot of assets, then the basic things, budgeting, savings, insurance policy, and who gets your stuff when you leave here. But counseling could be a very large part of it if it needs to go there. There's probably going to always be one person. I was that person for such a long time that doesn't want to talk about the dying, the death and the dying. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to talk about it. But then you get to a place where you realize maybe we should have this conversation, because then we can do all the planning, put everything together and just pack it away, just put it away. And then when it's time, it's there.
Yes.
But there are so many pieces to it. When you get down to it, they're the legal parts and pieces that should be addressed. For example, let me say this now, because you probably don't know this. The book was finished in 2019.
Yes.
By the end of 2020, I became the widow.
Oh.
Totally unexpected. Just blew me away. And there were days that I felt like maybe writing the book, I jinxed myself or something, but I know better than that. But what I wanted to say as it relates to that, my husband and I, we were selling our home. We were in the process of finishing all of that. And I think it ultimately sold maybe a couple of months after he passed. We had moved to another home. And I reached out to a probate attorney because my agent wanted to make sure that everything was okay with the sale and that I wasn't going to face anything unexpected with family members or anybody for that matter coming along trying to lay claim to any benefits. She wanted the deed, a copy of the deed, and the only thing that she was looking for, just one term, right to survivorship. And if my name was there, I didn't have to do anything else. She said, you don't even have to read a will because it's named in the deed. This property is yours and it doesn't go to anybody else. You have full clearance. And I was like, so there is a will, but she said, you don't need to read it. you're it.
Mhm.
But I didn't know that. I mean, I felt like I was gonna get everything. Our names were always on everything. Every bank account, our names were on. So I had access to all of that. But there are so many little things that people don't understand, because if you're not listed as the one that has right to survivorship, you might end up in probate court.
Mm.
And that's going to drag out. It can go for years. Yeah, if you're not listed as an equal person on the bank account, there is also this thing called a beneficiary for bank accounts. If you're not on the account or listed as the beneficiary, you can't touch that money. It just stays with the bank.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Yeah.
conversations, yeah, I learned a lot after becoming the widow, although I was learning before that. So I knew that once my husband passed and I learned this information from a probate attorney, I went to the bank now and made sure that my daughters are listed as beneficiaries.
Mm.
I didn't list them as, like on my account. They don't have access.
Yeah.
But if something happens to me, whatever is there, they can get.
Yes.
So,
Wow.
so that's why talking to a financial counselor and any other counseling that may be necessary, it's important, because you're going to learn something that you didn't already know.
Yeah. It's great information, Dr. Ellis. I mean, people want a copy of your book. Where can they go in your other books as well?
Well, actually, you can go to sabrinajellis.com. I'm excited right now. They're not ready yet,
Oh,
but in a few weeks, the book will be Audible and an ebook. And it has taken me all of this time to get to it, because the book was, the year the book was released, I didn't get involved in everything that went along with the publishing because we were in the pandemic. And
yes.
so the conference that we were going to release the book in was canceled and everything. And so now I'm just now coming full circle. But you can go to sabrinajellis.com to purchase the book. And it is on Amazon. And in a few weeks, it will be Audible and it will be an ebook.
Congratulations. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Dr. Ellis?
Oh, no, not really. This has been, I guess you can tell I'm a little passionate about it, because
Oh,
it's not so much about getting it to the widow as it is about the person who is married. And it's something to think about earlier. I think it should be thought about earlier more than later. I wish I had started the planning much sooner, but I am very grateful that I started when I did, so that I can live. I'm not ready to go just because my husband is gone.
no, it was such a pleasure speaking with you today, and I love you to come back, and
I'd love to.
yeah, so your wife life securing your future, and and the women came first, the advancement renewal in the African American Pentecostal Church, right? Is
Right,
that correct?
right.
Okay. Yeah.
Those were the earlier books. The
Yeah.
Advancing Church Renewal was a result of my dissertation for the Doctor of Ministry program, and that I was a part of. And then the second book was written because, just like everywhere else, women deal with the issue of being in ministry, and so many people believing that women are not called to ministry. So that book addresses that subject.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ellis.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, Christine.